Record 36. Empty pages, the Christian God, about my mother. It is very strange that a kind of empty white page should be left in my head. How I walked there, how I waited. I remember I had to wait. I know nothing about it. I remember not a sound, not a face, not a gesture, as if all communicating wires between me and the world were cut. When I came to, I found myself standing before him. I feared to raise my eyes. I saw only his enormous cast iron hands upon his knees. Those hands weighed upon him, bending his knees with their weight. He was slowly moving his fingers. His face was somewhere above, as if in fog, and only because his voice came to my ear from such a height, it did not roar like thunder, it did not deafen me, but appeared to be an ordinary human voice. Then you too, you the builder of the integral, you whose lot it was to become the greatest of all conquistadors, you whose name was to have been at the head of a glorious new chapter of the history of the United States, you. Blood ran to my head, to my cheeks, and here again a white page, only the pulsation of my temples and the heavy voice from above. But I remember not a word. Only when he became silent, I came and noticed how his hands moved heavily, like 1,000 pounds, and crawled slowly. A finger threatened me. Well, why are you silent? Is it true or not, executioner? So, I repeated submissively, and then I heard every word of his. Well then, do you think I am afraid of the word? Did you ever try to take off its shell and look into its inner meaning? I shall tell you. Remember a blue hill, a crowd, a cross, some up on the hill, sprinkled with blood, are busy nailing a body to the cross. Others below, sprinkled with tears, are gazing upwards. Does it not seem to you that the part which those above must play is the most difficult, the most important part? If it were not for them, how could that magnificent tragedy ever have staged? True, they were hissed by the dark crowd, but for that the author of the tragedy, God, should have remunerated them the more liberty, should he not? And the Christian most clement God himself, who burnt on the slow fire all the infidels, is he not an executioner? Was the number of those burned by the Christians less than the number of burned Christians? Yet you must understand this. Yet this God was for centuries glorified as the God of love. Absurd! Oh no, just the contrary. It is rather a patent for the imperishable wisdom of man, written in blood. Even at the time when he still was wild and hairy, man knew that real algebraic love for humanity must inevitably be inhuman, and that the inevitable mark of truth is cruelty, just as the inevitable mark of fire is its property of causing the sensation of burning. Could you show me a fire that would not hurt? Well, prove now your point. Proceed. Argue. How could I argue? How could I argue when those thoughts were once mine, though I was never able to dress them in such a splendid tempered armor? I remained silent. If your silence is intended to mean that you agree with me, let us talk as adults do after the children have gone to bed. Let us talk to the logical end. I ask, what was it that man from his diaper age dreamed of, tormented himself for, prayed for? He longed for the day when someone would tell him that happiness is, and then would chain him to it. What else are we doing now? The ancient beam about a paradise. Remember, there in paradise they had no desires anymore, no pity, no love. There they are all blessed. An operation has been performed upon their center of fancy. That is why they are blessed. Angels, servants of God. And now, at the very moment when we have caught up with that dream, when we hold it like this. He clenched his hand so that he held a stone, and its sap would have run out. At the moment when all that was left for us was to adorn our prize, to distribute it amongst all in equal pieces, at that very moment the cast iron roar was suddenly broken off. I was as red as a piece of iron on an anvil under the smoldering sledgehammer. This seemed to have stopped for a second, hanging in air, and I waited until suddenly. How old are you? 32. Just double the age, and as simple as at 16. Listen, is it possible that it really never occurred to you that we do not yet know their names, but I am certain you will disclose them to us, that they are interested in you only as the builder of the integral, only in order to be able, through the use of you? Don't, I cried, but it was like protecting yourself with your hand and crying to a bullet. You may still be hearing your own don'ts, but the bullet, meanwhile, has burned you through, and writhing with pain, you are prostrated on the ground. Yes, yes, the builder and the integral. Yes, yes. At once there came back to me the angry face of Dash, with twitching brick red gills on the morning when both of them. I remember now clearly how I raised my eyes and laughed. A Socrates-like bald-headed man was sitting before me, and small drops of sweat dotted the bald surface of his cranium. How simple, how magnificently trivial everything was. How simple, almost to the point of being ridiculous. Laughter was choking me and bursting forth in puffs. I covered my mouth with my mouth and with my hand and rushed wildly out. Steps, wind, damp, leaping fragments of light and faces, and while running, no, only to see her once more. Here again an empty white page. All I remember is feet, not people, just feet, hundreds of feet, confusedly stamping feet, falling from somewhere on the pavement, a heavy rain of feet, and some cheerful, daring voice, and a shout that was probably from me. Hey, hey, come here, come along with us. Afterward, a deserted square, heavily overloaded with tense winds. In the middle of the square, a dim, heavy, threatening mass, the machine of the well-doer. Its seemingly unexpected image rose within me in response to the sight of that machine. A snow-white pillar, a snow-white pillow, and on the pillow a head thrown back, and half-closed eyes, and the sharp, sweet line of teeth. All this seemed so absurdly, so terribly connected with the machine. I know how this connection has come about, but I do not yet want to see it, nor to say it aloud. I don't want to. I do not. I closed my eyes, sat down on the steps which led towards the machine. I must have been running, for my face was wet. From somewhere very far away cries were coming, but nobody heard them. Nobody heard me crying, "Save me from it! Save me!" If only I heard a mother as the ancients. If only I had a mother, as the ancients had. My mother mine, for whom I should not be the builder of the integral, and not D-503, not a molecule of the United States, but merely a living human piece, a piece of herself, a trampled, smothered, a cast-off piece, and though I was driving the nails into the cross, or being nailed to it, perhaps it is the same, she would hear that no one else could hear, her old ground together wrinkled lips. Record 37. Infusorian, Doomsday, her room. This morning, while we were in the refectory, my neighbor to my left whispered to me in a frightened tone, "But why don't you eat? Don't you see? They are looking at you." I had to pluck up all my strength to show a smile. I felt it, like a crack in my face. I smiled at the borders of the crack, drew apart wider and wider. It was quite painful. That followed was this. What followed was this. No sooner had I lifted the small cube of paste upon my fork than my fork jerked from my hand and twinkled against the plate, and at once the tables, the walls, the plates, the air even trembled and rang, and outside too an enormous iron round roar reaching the sky, floating over heads and houses, it died away in the distance in small, hardly perceptible circles, like those upon water. I saw faces instantaneously grow faded and bleached. I saw mouths filled with food suddenly motionless, and forks hanging in air. Then everything became confused, jumped off the centuries-old track. Everybody jumped up from his place without singing the hymn, and confusedly in disorder, hastily finished chewing, choking, grasping one another. They were asking, "What happened? What?" And the disordinary fragments of the machine, which one was once perfect and great, fell down in all directions. Down the elevator, down the stairs, stamping of feet, pieces of words like pieces of torn letters carried by the winds. The same output from the neighboring houses. A minute later, the avenue seemed like a drop of water under a microscope. The infusoria, locked up in a transparent glass-like drop of water, were tossing around to the sides, up and down. Ah! One small triumphant voice. I saw the back of a neck and a finger pointing to the sky. I remembered very distinctly a yellow, pinkish nail, and under the nail a crescent crawling out as if from under the horizon. The finger was like a compass. All eyes were raised to the sky. There, running away from an invisible pursuit, masses of cloud were rushing upon each other, and colored by clouds, the arrows of the guardians with their tubes like antennae were floating, and further to the west something like, at first nobody could understand what it was, even I, who knew, unfortunately, more than the others. It was like a great hive of black arrows swarming somewhere in an extraordinary height. They looked like hardly noticeable swifting moving points. Nearer and nearer, hoarse guttural sounds began to reach the earth, and finally we saw birds just over our heads. They filled the sky with their sharp black descending triangles. The stormy winds drove them down, and they began to land on the cupolas, on the roofs, poles, and balconies. Ah, ah! And the triumphant black back of the neck turned, and I saw that man with the protruding forehead, but it seemed that the title, so to speak, was all the way was left of him. He seemed to have crawled out from under his forehead, and on his face, around the eyes and lips, bunches of rays were growing. Through the noise of the wind and wings and cawing, he cried to me, "Do you realize? Do you realize? We have blown up the wall. The wall has been blown up. Do you understand? Somewhere in the background, figures with their heads drawn in were hastily rushing by, and into houses in the middle of the pavement, a mass of those who had already operated upon. They moved towards the west, hairy bunches of rays around the lips and eyes. I grasped his hand. Tell me, where is she? Where is I-330? There, beyond the wall, or I must. Do you hear me? At once, I cannot. Here, he shouted in a happy, drunken voice, showing strong yellow teeth. Here in town, she is acting. Oh, we are doing great work. Who are those we? Who am I? There was about 50 around him. Like him, they seemed to have crawled out from under his forehead. They were loud, cheerful, strong-toothed, swallowing the stormy wind, like their simple, not at all terrible-looking electrocutors. Where did they get them? They started to the west, towards the operated ones, encircling them, keeping parallel to 48th Avenue, stumbling against the tightly drawn ropes woven by the wind. I was running to her. What for, I do not know. I was stumbling empty streets. The city seemed foreign, wild, filled with the ceaseless, triumphant hubbub of birds. It seemed like the end of the world, doomsday. Through the glass of the walls, in quiet, a few houses, this cut into mine. I saw male and female numbers in shameless embraces, without curtains lowered, without pink checks in the middle of the day. The house, her house, the door ajar, the lobby, the control desk, all was empty. The elevator had stopped in the middle of its shaft. I was panting up the endless stairs, the corridor, like the spokes of a wheel. Figure is on the door, dashed past my eyes. 320, 326, 330. I dashed 330. Through the glass wall, everything in her room was seen to be upside down, confused, ceased. The table overturned its legs in the air like a breast. The bed was absurdly placed away from the wall, obliquely strewn over the floor, fallen, strewed in petals of the pink cheeks. I bent over to pick one, two, three of them, all borne the name D-503. I was on all of them, drops of myself, of my molten, powdered south self, and that was all that was left. Somehow I felt that I should not lie there on the floor and be trodden upon. I gathered a handful of them, but then on the table and carefully smoothed them out, glanced at them and laughed aloud. I never knew it before, but how I know, and you too know, that laughter may be of different colors. It is but a distant echo of an explosion within us. It may be the echo of a holiday, red, blue, and golden fireworks, or at times it may represent pieces of human flesh exploding into the air. I noticed an unfamiliar name on one of the pink checks. I do not remember the figures, but I remember the letter F. I brushed the stubs from the papers from the table to the floor, stepped on them, on myself, stamped on them with my heels, and went out. I saw the I sat in the corridor on the windowsill in front of her door and waited long and stupidly. An old man appeared. His face was like a pierced, empty bladder with folds. From beneath the puncture, something transparent was still slowly dripping. Slowly, vaguely, I realized. Tears. And only then, when the old man was quite far off, I came to and exclaimed, "Please, listen, do you know?" Number I-330? The old man turned around, waved his hand in despair, and stumbled farther away. I returned home at dusk. On the west side, the sky was twitching every second in a pale blue electric convulsion. A subdued, heavy roar was proceeding from that direction. The roofs were covered with black charred sticks. Birds. I lay down, and instantly, like a heavy came, like a heavy beast, sleep came and stifled me. Record 38. I don't know what title, perhaps the whole synopsis may be called A Cast-Off Cigarette Butt. I woke, a bright glare painful to look at. I half closed my eyes. My head seemed filled with some caustic blue smoke. Everything was enveloped in fog and through the fog, but it did not turn on the light. Then how is it? I jumped up at the table, leaning her chin on her hand and smiling. Was I-330 looking at me? She was at the very table at which I am now writing. Those 10 or 15 minutes are already behind me, cruelly twisted into a very firm spring. Yet it seems to me that the door closed after her only a second ago, and that I could still overtake her and grasp her hand, and that she might laugh out and say, I-30 was at the table. I rushed towards her. I saw your room, I thought. But midway, I hurt myself upon a sharp, motionless spears of her eyelashes and stops. I remembered. She looked at me in the same way before, in the integral. It was urgent to tell her everything in 1 second, and in such a way that she should believe, or she would never. Listen, I-330, I must, everything. No, 1 moment. Let me have a glass of water first. My mouth was as dry as though it were lined with blotting paper. I poured a glass of water, but I could not. I put the glass back upon the table, and with both hands firmly grasped the carafe. I noticed that the blue smoke was from a cigarette. She brought the cigarette to her lips, and with avidity she drew it and swallowed the smoke as I did water. Then she said, "Don't be silent. Don't you see? It matters little. I came anyway. They are waiting for me below. Do you want do you want these minutes to which are our last?" Abruptly, she threw the cigarette on the floor and bent backwards over the side of the chair to reach the bottom of the wall. It was quite difficult to do so, and I remember how the chair swayed slightly, how two of her legs lifted, then the curtains fell. She came close to me and embraced me. Her knees through her dress were like slow, gentle warmth, enveloping and permitting poison. Suddenly, it happens at times, you plunge into sweat, warm sleep, then all at once, as if something pricks you, you tremble and your eyes are again open widely. So it was. There on the floor in her room were the pink cheeks stamped with traces of footsteps. Pink check stamped with traces of footsteps. One of them bore the letter F, and some figures, plus and minus, fused within my mind into one lump. I could not say, even now, what sort of a feeling it was, but I crushed her so that she cried out with pain. 1 more minute out of these 10 or 15, her head thrown back, lying on the bright yellow pillow, her eyes half closed, a sharp, sweet line of teeth, and all this reminded me of an irresistible, absurd, torturing way about something forbidden, something not permissible at the moment. More tenderly, more cruelly, I pressed her to myself. More bright grew the blue traces of my fingers. She said without opening her eyes, "I noticed this. They say you want to see the well-doer. They say you went to see the well-doer yesterday. Is it true?" "Yes." Then her eyes opened widely, and with delight I looked at her and saw that her face grew quickly paler and paler, that her face itself disappearing, only the eyes remained. I told her everything, only for some reason, what I don't know. No, it is not true. I know the reason. I was silent about one thing. His assertion at the end that they need me only in order. Like the image on the photographic plates in a developing fluid, her face gradually reappeared. The cheeks, the white lines of teeth, the lips. She stood up and went to the mirror door on the closet. My mouth was dry again. I poured water, but it was revolting to drink it. I put the glass back on the table and asked, "Did you come to see me because you wanted to inquire?" A sharp-marking triangle of brows drawn to the temples looked at me from the mirror. She turned around to say something, but said nothing. It was not necessary, I knew. To bid her goodbye, I moved my foreign limbs, struck the chair with them. It fell upside down, dead, like the table in her room. Her lips were cold, just as cold was once the floor here near my bed. When she left, I sat down on the floor, bent over the cigarette butt. I cannot write anymore. I no longer want to. Record 39. The End. All this was like the glass crystal of salt thrown into the saturated solution. Quickly, needle-like crystals began to appear, to grow more substantial and solid. It was clear to me the decision was made, and tomorrow morning I shall do it. It amounts to suicide, but perhaps then I shall be reborn, for only what is killed can be reborn. Every second, the sky twitched in convulsion there in the west. My head was burning and pulsating inside. I was up all night, and I fell asleep only at about 7 o'clock in the morning, when the darkness of the night was already dispelled and becoming gray, and when the roofs crowded with birds became visible. I woke up 10 o'clock. Evidently the bell did not ring today. On the table, left from yesterday, there stood the glass of water. I gulped the water down with avidity, then I ran. I had to do it quickly, as quickly as possible. The sky was desert blue, all eaten up by the storm, sharp corners of shadows. Everything seemed to be cut out of blue, autumnal air, thin, dangerous to touch. It seemed so brittle, ready to disperse into glass dust. Within me, something familiar. I ought not to think. It was dangerous to think, and I did not think. Perhaps it did not even see properly. I only registered impressions. There on the pavement, thrown from somewhere, branches were strewn. Their leaves were green, amber, and cherry red. Above the crossing, each other birds and arrows were tossing about here and below, heads, open mouths, hands waving branches. All this must have been shouting, buzzing, chirping. Then streets empty as if swept by a plague. I remember I stumbled over something disgustingly soft, yielding yet motionless. I bent down. A corpse. It was lying flat, the legs apart, the face. I recognized the thick Negro lips, which even now seemed to sprinkle with laughter. His eyes, firmly screwed in, laughed into my face. 1 second. I stepped over him and ran. I could no longer. I had to have everything done as soon as possible, or else I felt I would break. I would break into like a overloaded sail. Luckily, it was not more than 20 steps away. I already saw the sign with the golden letters, the Bureau of Guardians. At the door, I stopped for a moment to gulp down as much air as I could and stepped in. Inside, in the corridor, stood an endless chain of numbers, holding small sheets of paper and heavy notebooks. They moved slowly, advancing a step or two, and stopping again. I began to be tossed about along the chain. My head was breaking to pieces. I moved them by the sleeves. I implored them as a sick man implores to be given something that would, even at the price of the sharpest pain, ends everything forever. A woman with a belt tightly collapsed around her waist over the eunuch, and with two distinctly protruding, squatty hemispheres tossing about as if she had eyes on them, chuckled at me. "He has a bellyache. Show him to the room, second door to the right." Everybody laughed, and because of the laughter something rose in my throat. I felt I should either scream or suddenly from behind someone touched my elbow. I turned around. Transparent wing ears, but they were not pink as usual. They were purplish red. His Adam apple was tossing about as though ready to tear the covering, quickly boring into me. "What are you here for?" I seized him. "Quickly, please, quickly, into your office. I must tell you everything. Right away. I'm glad that it may be terrible that it should be you to whom, but it is well, it is well." He too knew her. This made it even more tormenting for me, but perhaps he too would tremble when he should hear, and we would both be killing, and I would not be alone at that, my supreme second. The door closed with a slam. I remember a piece of paper was caught between the door, and it rustled on the floor when the door closed. And then a strange, airless silence covered us as if a glass bell were put over us. If only he had uttered a single most insignificant word, no matter what, I should have told him everything at once. But he was silent, so keyed up that I heard a noise in my ears. I said without looking at him, "I think I always hated her from the very beginning." I struggled. "Or no, no, don't believe me. I could but have, but I did not want to save myself. I wanted to perish. This was dearer to me than anything else, and even now, even this minute, when I know already everything. Do you know that I was summoned by the well-doer?" "Yes, I do." "But what he told me, please realize that it was equivalent to, it was as if someone should remove the floor from under you this minute, and you and all here on the desk, the papers, the ink would splash out and cover everything with blots." "What else? What further? Hurry up, others are waiting." Then, stumbling and muttering, I told him everything that is recorded in these pages, about my real self, and about my hairy self, and about my hands. Yes, exactly, that was the beginning, and how I would not do my duty then, and how I lied to myself, and how she obtained false certificates from me, and how I grew worse and worse every day, and about the long corridors around undergrounds and there beyond the wall. All this I threw out in formless pieces of lumps. I would stutter and fail to find words. The lips, double curved, and the smile would prompt me with the word I needed, and I would nod gratefully. "Yes, yes." Suddenly, what was it? He was talking for me, and I only listened and nodded. "Yes, yes." And then, "Yes, exactly. So, yes, yes." I felt cold around my mouth, as though it were wet with either, and I asked with difficulty, "But how is it? How could not you could not learn anywhere?" He smiled, a smile growing more and more curved. Then, but I see that you want to conceal from me something. For example, you enumerated everything you saw and beyond the wall, but you failed to mention one thing. You deny it, but don't you remember that once, just in passing, for a second, you saw me there? Yes, yes, me. Silence. Suddenly, like a flash of lightning, it became shamelessly clear to me. He too, and all myself, my torment, all that I brought here, crushed by the burden, plucking up my last strength as if performing a great feat, all appeared to me only funny, like the ancient anecdotes about Abraham and Isaac. Abraham, all in a cold sweat, with the knife already raised over his son, over himself, and suddenly a voice from above. Never mind, I was only joking. Without taking my eyes from the smile which grew more and more curved, I put my hands on the edge of the desk and slowly, very slowly, pushed myself with my chair away from him. Then, instantly gathering myself into my own hands, I dashed madly out, past loud voices, past steps and mouths. I do not remember how I got into one of the public restrooms at the station of the Underground Railway. Above, everything was perishing. The great civilization, the most rational in human history, was crumbling. But here, by some irony, everything remained as before, beautiful. The walls shone, water murmured cozily, and like this water, the unseen, transparent music. Only think of it. All this is doomed. All this will be covered with grass someday. Only myths will remain. I moaned aloud. At the same instant, I felt someone gently patting my knee. It was from the left. It was my neighbor who occupied a seat on my left, an enormous forehead, a bald parabola, yellow and unintelligible lines, a wrinkle on his forehead, those lines about me. I understand you. I understand completely, he said. Yet you must calm yourself. You must. It will return. It will inevitably return. It is only important that everybody should learn of my discovery. You are the first to whom I talk about it, and I have calculated that there is no infinity. No. I looked at him wildly. Yes? Yes. I told you so. There is no infinity. If the universe is infinite, then the average density of matter must be equal to zero. But as it is not zero, we know consequently the universe is finite. It is spherical in the form of a radius of its radius r squared is equal to the average density multiplied by. The only thing left is to calculate the numerical coefficient. And then, do you realize what it means? It means that everything is final, everything is simple. But you, my honored sir, you disturb me. You prevent my finishing my calculations by your yelling. I do not know which shattered me more, his discovery or his positiveness at an apocalyptic hour. I only then noticed that he had a notebook in his hands and a logical dial. I understood then that even if everything was perishing, it was my duty before you, my unknown and beloved, to leave these records in a finished form. I asked him to give me some paper, and here in the restroom, to the accompaniment of quiet music, transparent like water, I wrote down these last lines. I was about to put down a period as the ancients would put a cross over the caves into which they used to throw their dead. Then, all of a sudden, my pencil trembled and fell from between my fingers. Listen, I pulled my neighbor. Yes, listen, I say. There where your finite universe ends. What is there? What? He had no time to answer. From above, down the steps, stamping. Record 40. Facts, the bell, I am certain. Daylight, it is clear, the barometer, 760 millimeters. It is possible that I, D-503, really wrote these pages. Is it possible that I ever felt or imagined I felt this at all? The handwriting is mine, and what follows is all in my handwriting. Fortunately, only the handwriting. No more delirium. No absurd metaphors, no feelings, only facts. I am healthy, perfectly, absolutely healthy. I am smiling, I cannot help smiling. A splinter has been taken out of my head, and I feel so light, so empty. To be more exact, no empty, but there is nothing foreign, nothing that prevents me from smiling. Smiling is the normal state of the human being. The facts are as follows. That evening, my neighbor who discovered the finiteness of the universe, and I, and all others who did not have a certificate showing that we had been operated on. All of us were taken to the nearest auditorium. For some reason, the number of the auditorium, 112, seemed familiar to me. There they tied us to the tables and performed the great operation. Next day, I, D-503, appeared before the well-doer and told him everything known to me about the enemies of happiness. Why before it seemed hard for me to go, I cannot understand. The only explanation seems to be my illness, my soul. The same evening, sitting at the table with him, with the well-doer, I saw for the first time in my life the famous gas chamber. They brought in that woman. She was to testify in my presence. That woman remained stubbornly silent and smiling. I noticed that she had sharp and very white teeth, which were very pretty. She was brought under the bell. Her face became very white, and her eyes were large and dark. All was very pretty. Then they began pumping the air from under the bell. She threw her head backwards and half closed her eyes. Her lips were pressed together. This reminded me of something. She looked at me, holding the arms of the chair firmly. She continued to look until her eyes closed. Then she was taken out and brought to by means of electrodes and again put under the bell. The procedure was repeated 3 times, yet she did not utter a word. The others who were brought in with that woman proved to be more honest. Many of them began to speak after the first trial. Tomorrow they will all ascend the steps to the machine of the well-doer. No postponement is possible, for there still is chaos, groaning cadavers, beasts in the western section, and to our regret there are still quantities of numbers who betrayed reason. But on the transverse Avenue 40 we succeeded in establishing a temporary wall of high voltage waves, and I hope we win. More than that, I am certain we shall win, for reason must win. The end. Thank you for listening to We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. If you enjoyed this reading, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time for another story.